Hi, I'm Marcus Lapp with the Indie Music Lab, and today I want to share 3 ways which you can implement loops and samples into your productions. Now, there are an infinite number of creative things you can do with loops and samples, especially if you have a library like Splice or Noiiz, but these are 3 techniques that I specifically used in one of my productions, so I thought I'd share those with you today. So let's dive in. Okay, so the first technique we're going to look at is chop the loop and rearrange it. Now, I'm here in my Studio One session. This is a song that I produced about a year and a half ago. So I'm just going to play just a little section of it just so you can get an idea of what the song sounds like. Shivers on my skin, drowning under the silence. Okay, so that's what the song sounds like, and so now let's talk about how did I implement this technique of chopping the loop and rearranging it for this particular song. So the main drum sound that you hear in this song comes from a loop in my Noiiz library. Noiiz is spelled Noiiz, and I get almost all my samples from them, and I highly recommend them, especially if Splice feels a little overwhelming and you want something that's not as pricey. Noiiz is the way to go. So I'll also leave a link in the description if you want to check them out. So here's what the original drum loop sounds like that I ended up manipulating and rearranging on this song. So this is here's what that sounds like. So I absolutely love the texture of it. And all the drum sounds and the textured sounds I absolutely loved, and they worked beautifully with this song. But the kick and the snare weren't exactly hitting on the beats that I wanted them to, but I still love the texture and the overall sound of this loop, so I knew I wanted to use it. And so what I did was I chopped the loop up and I rearranged it. So let me show you what I did. So I loaded up an instance of Impact, which is basically the Studio One version of a sampler, and I have this sound from the loop, which is like a kick with a tail on it. I've got a kick, the exact same kick, copied and pasted over, but without the tail. And then I've got the snare that also has some tail on it, and I've got this vocal sound. So those are the only sounds that I actually ended up using for the loop, and having this allowed me to make the pattern exactly the way I wanted it to. So it sounded something like this. So yeah, just chopping up that loop and pulling out some of the individual sections of the loop. That way I can make it my own, make my own pattern out of it, but still keep the texture of the loop, which is what really attracted me to the loop in the first place. And so I was able to do that, and it worked beautifully for this song. Okay, so now the second technique we're going to look at is called use effects to change the sound. Now, a great example of this is also in this same song. It's with a melodic loop. It's a vocal sound that sounds like this. With the song. So I basically use this loop as is. I was actually browsing through my sound library when I had most of the elements already in this track, just looking for interesting sounds or things that I might want to add to it, and I stumbled across this vocal sound or this vocal loop, and it sounded amazing, and the notes hit exactly where they were supposed to, and so I didn't actually change anything. The only thing but what I did do was I added some effects to bring some life to the original loop. So the original loop sounds like this. So it sounds too slow, sounds too stagnant, doesn't have a lot of movement. So what I did was the main thing that is happening, the main change that is happening is a sidechain effect that is put into place by this Kickstart plugin, which is basically an automated sidechain. It's made by Nicky Romero. This is a great plugin that I use all the time, especially if you just want a straightforward sidechain. This really is a time saver. It will help you to not have to manually set up the sidechain with a kick drum or whatever else you're using. So that is the main thing that is giving it movement, and you can really hear that. You can really hear that pumping effect that it's giving. That's the main thing. That's the main difference that is happening and the most noticeable. And then the next thing that is really happening that is having a significant effect is this saturation plugin. This is a free plugin from Softtube. I use this on everything. I love this plugin, and I just adjusted this to keep high setting. That way this saturator really focuses on saturating those high frequencies, which is where this track lives. And so that really helped give it some extra color as well. And then the third thing that we're really doing here is just giving it some more movement, but instead of what we did with the kickstart in volume, we're introducing a stereo movement. So it's not moving all the way left or all the way right. So I've got this preset here with this pancake plugin, left to right shy. So as you can tell here by this wave that it's going left by about 35% left and then 35% right. So it's swimming from left and right, and let me play it without it, and then I'll play it with it, and then you'll be able to really tell the difference. Here's without it. Here's with it. It doesn't do a ton, and it's very subtle, but it really helps give it some space, give it some movement, so it feels like there's a little more life added to the track. And so yeah, those are the three plugins that I use that really changed the sound of this loop and that gave it a new life. And adding these three effects really helped it mesh well and fit well with the song. And I just love the way it sounded, so I didn't change anything with the loop. Instead, I just added some effects to add some movement and to add some color to the original loop. Okay, so the third technique we're going to look at is throw in little effects, samples, and sounds throughout the song. Now, I did that a lot with this song in particular, and even right from the very beginning, I've got this sound of a cable being inserted into a guitar, which sounds like this. And then I've got this little effect sound to complement that. So just throwing in these little effects can really give some creative edge to the track that you're doing, so it doesn't sound so stale, so it doesn't sound so bland. And using these little effects like this and sprinkling them in throughout the song can really make a big difference. Now, the main sound that you probably hear when you listen to this song when it comes to effects is this little static, glitchy kind of sound that comes in and out. And that sounds like this. So I use this often at the end of certain sections of the song just to transition from one section to the next. Static shivers on my skin, drowning under the silence. So yeah, those are just some effects samples that I threw into the track. Now, you might be asking, okay, how did you know how to put them in the right place where they sounded good and they sounded the way they did? Well, one way that I did that and one way that I was able to find these sounds relatively quickly is because, and this is a recommendation to you just from my personal experience. So I have a very organized sound library. Now, I download a ton of sample packs from Noiiz, which I talked about earlier. And what I do then is I will literally filter through every sound, and then whenever there's a sound that I like or that I think has potential to work in one of my songs, I would drag it into a folder that I probably have already made. So over the months and over the last 2 years or so, I've been really working on nailing down and having a good curated sound library where I know where everything is now, which is such a big deal because now I can go straight to, like, let's say, okay, if I want a sound of a guitar being plugged into a, or of a cable being plugged into a guitar, I know it'll be under effects, and okay, it'll be like, oh, guitar amp noises, that's actually where this one was located, and I've got multiple sounds here that I can go to, and I got there in like 2 seconds because I knew exactly where it was because it was my library that I curated and I made myself. Now, I've kind of gone to the extreme doing this, and I'm not saying you have to do the same. I'm more of an organized freak in that way, but I would say at least you want to have a folder of your favorite sounds and loops that you go back to and that are part of your signature sound, let's say. So I definitely at least recommend starting and having some type of favorites library that you have self-curated for yourself, and that can be really helpful to just, you know exactly where to find the sound that you're looking for because you made the library and it's right there. It'll be right there waiting for you when you go and search through the sounds that you have. So that's just a little tip, a little recommendation from me to you, and I hope that you find it helpful. So anyway, that is going to be it for me today, guys. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there are an infinite number of ways in which you can implement loops and samples into your productions. And so I only showed you 3 of them today, but what I would love to hear is, what is the one technique that you love using with a loop or with a sample that really gives it life and that really makes it fit well with the songs that you're doing? Please let me know in the comments below, what is a technique that you use that really works well for you? I would love to hear. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm Marcus, this is the Indie Music Lab, and I will see you in another video. See ya.